Fanatical Prospecting by Jeb Blount. Picture this scene. A young salesperson, brimming with confidence and fresh ideas, strides into his boss's office. He's convinced he's cracked the code to modern selling. The telephone? Ancient history. Cold calling? Something dinosaurs did. He's all about social selling now, building connections on LinkedIn, sharing clever content, and waiting for customers to come knocking. His boss, a battle-tested veteran who's built his entire career in the trenches, simply listens. Then he proposes something interesting, a challenge. For 1 week, the young representative can work his shiny new strategy. Meanwhile, the boss will dust off the old playbook and pick up the phone. End of day 1. The young salesperson is practically glowing. 7 new LinkedIn connections. He's building his network, feeling productive. His boss asks one simple question. That's great, but how much did you actually sell? The young representative waves this off dismissively. You don't get it, he says. This approach takes time. The boss glances down at his call sheet. In just a few hours, he dialed 73 numbers, had real conversations with 19 people, and closed 2 actual deals. Money in the bank. Credit cards processed. They kept this up for 4 more days. By week's end, the boss had 17 new accounts on the books. The young representative? He had plenty of new online connections, a healthy stream of likes and comments, and exactly 0 sales. That boss was Jeb Blount, and that eye-opening lesson forms the beating heart of his game-changing book, Fanatical Prospecting. This isn't your typical motivational sales book filled with empty promises. It's a brutally honest, no-excuses roadmap to the single activity that separates the top 1% of salespeople from everyone else struggling to hit quota. Jeb Blount isn't some ivory tower theorist. He's built multi-million-dollar companies from scratch with a phone in his hand and grit in his soul. He knows intimately the gut-wrenching fear of making that first call and the crushing weight of an empty pipeline. Today, we're diving deep into his life's work. And I promise you, by the time we're done, you'll understand the real secret to sustained success in any field. Spoiler alert. It's not about finding a shortcut. It's about becoming the kind of person who doesn't need one. In every company, across every industry, there's a special breed of performer, the superstars. That top 20% bringing in 80% of the sales. They collect the awards, the trips, the fat commission checks. They seem to operate on an entirely different frequency. For years, companies have poured billions into figuring out their secret. Is it raw talent, magnetic charisma, some special intelligence? Jeb Blount says it's none of those things. The real secret is almost embarrassingly simple. So simple, in fact, that most people look right past it. Here it is. The superstars are relentless, obsessive, fanatical prospectors. Prospecting is the art of identifying and starting conversations with potential customers. And superstars are absolutely obsessed with it. They don't sit around waiting for leads to magically appear. They don't count on marketing to fill their calendar. They take complete, unapologetic ownership of keeping their pipeline overflowing. They prospect everywhere, all the time, on the phone, through email, at networking events, even standing in line at Starbucks. Their mantra is beautifully simple: one more call. They prospect when business is booming, because they know a downturn lurks around every corner. They prospect when times are tough, because it's the only lifeline. They even prospect when they're not feeling it. Here's the uncomfortable truth most people desperately want to avoid. The number one reason for failure in sales is an empty pipeline. And the number one cause of an empty pipeline is failing to prospect consistently. We're living in an era obsessed with finding the easy button. We're bombarded with promises of getting rich without effort, losing weight without sacrifice. But in sales, and honestly in life, there is no easy button. Jeb makes this crystal clear. You're owed nothing. You have to wake up and make things happen yourself. The first step toward becoming a fanatical prospector is abandoning the fantasy that it can be made easy. Prospecting is hard. It's emotionally exhausting. It's packed with rejection. It genuinely sucks sometimes. And the moment you accept this reality, the moment you stop wishing it were easier and start working to become better, everything shifts. This journey starts not with a technique, but with a mindset. Jeb has spent his career studying top performers and discovered they all share 7 core mindsets. Think of these as the foundation upon which everything else is built. First, they're optimistic and enthusiastic. Each day is a fresh opportunity, not a burden. They attack their day with infectious energy, brushing past complainers and naysayers. Second, they're fiercely competitive. They see prospecting as a battle for their prospects' attention, and they're hardwired to win. They prepare each day to outwit and out-hustle the competition. Third, they're deeply confident. They expect to win. They've developed the mental armor to manage the fear and doubt that paralyzes others. This confidence is magnetic. It's what persuades a prospect to give them their most valuable asset, their time. Fourth, they're relentless. They have an almost primal need to achieve, and giving up simply isn't in their vocabulary. They see rejection not as a stop sign, but as rocket fuel. They genuinely believe their next yes is just around the corner. Fifth, they're hungry for knowledge. They're constantly learning, devouring books, podcasts, and training. Every setback is a masterclass in disguise, not a failure. Sixth, they're systematic and efficient. They operate with almost machine-like precision. They understand time's true value and structure their day to maximize it, ruthlessly tuning out distractions. And finally, they're adaptive and flexible. They're constantly experimenting, adopting new technologies, and flexing with the changing world, doing whatever it takes to keep their pipeline healthy. Once this mindset is locked in, you need to understand the immutable laws governing the sales universe. These are like the laws of physics. You can ignore them, but you can't escape their consequences. The first is what Jeb calls the 30-day rule. It's simple yet powerful. The prospecting you do in this 30-day period will pay dividends for the next 90 days. Let that sink in. If you skip a single day of prospecting, you won't feel the pain today. You'll feel it sometime in the next 3 months. Miss a whole week. Maybe you're swamped with paperwork or traveling, and you'll see it reflected in your commission check. Take a whole month off, like many people do during the holidays, and you'll wake up in March to a bone-dry pipeline, wondering what the hell happened. You'll think you have a closing problem, but the reality is you have a prospecting problem that started 90 days earlier. This connects directly to the second law, the universal law of need. This law governs desperation. It states that the more desperately you need something, the less likely you are to get it. When your pipeline is empty and you're pinning all your hopes on 1 or 2 deals, you start radiating desperation. Your tone shifts. Your body language screams it. Prospects can smell it a mile away, and it repels them. They're drawn to confident salespeople, not desperate ones. Desperation makes you emotional, illogical, and weak. You start throwing out discounts you shouldn't, making poor decisions that only dig your hole deeper. The only escape from the universal law of need is obeying the third law, the law of replacement. Here's a quick math problem. If you have 30 prospects in your pipeline and your closing rate is 10%, what happens when you close 1 deal? Most people would say you have 29 prospects left. The real answer is you have 20. Why? Because if your average is 1 out of 10, closing that one deal means the other 9 weren't viable. To keep your pipeline healthy, you can't just replace the one you closed. You need to replace all 10 prospects that were part of that statistical group. Failing to grasp this traps salespeople on a miserable roller coaster. They prospect hard, fill the pipeline, then stop prospecting to focus on closing. For a month or two, they're heroes. But because they weren't replacing the opportunities falling through the cracks, they inevitably hit a slump. The anatomy of nearly every sales slump is identical. They stopped prospecting. So what's the cure? When you're in a hole, the first rule is stop digging. When you're in a sales slump, the first rule is start prospecting. It's the only way out. You have to get back up to the plate and start swinging. This brings us to a question people constantly ask. With all the new technology, is cold calling dead? Jeb's answer is a resounding no. But he completely reframes the debate. He says the argument was never really about whether a call is cold, warm, or hot. The real issue, the one making salespeople so uncomfortable, has always been about one thing: the willingness to interrupt. Whether you're picking up the phone, firing off an email, or messaging someone on LinkedIn, if they aren't expecting to hear from you, you're interrupting their day. It's this act of interruption that triggers fear. You can't control their response, and that unknown makes us feel vulnerable. Their initial reaction often feels like rejection, and as social creatures, we're wired to avoid that feeling at all costs. This is why so many salespeople hide behind their computers, waiting for inbound leads to magically materialize. But the biggest, most lucrative prospects rarely respond to passive marketing. Their accounts are so valuable that salespeople are lined up around the block. The only way to start a conversation is to interrupt them. So the question isn't whether to cold call or not. The real question is how to strategically balance your interruptions across all available channels to give yourself a competitive edge. Jeb argues that relying on a single prospecting method is like putting your entire retirement savings into one stock. It's reckless. The very best salespeople use a balanced prospecting methodology. They mix telephone calls, in-person visits, email, social selling, text messaging, networking, and referrals. The right mix depends on your industry, your product, and your territory. A 20-year veteran with deep connections will have a different mix than a rookie new to the territory. That rookie needs to be ready to hit the phones hard or knock on a lot of doors to build their database from scratch. To do this effectively, you need a system. This is where Jeb introduces the prospecting pyramid. Imagine a pyramid. At the wide bottom are thousands of potential prospects you know almost nothing about. As you move up, the information gets richer. You have contact names, email addresses, maybe data on their buying cycles. Higher still, you have fully qualified prospects where you've identified the buying window. Near the top sit hot inbound leads and referrals. And at the very tip of the pyramid are the most valuable prospects of all, highly qualified opportunities who are entering the buying window right now. Struggling salespeople treat their database like a flat square. Every prospect gets the same treatment, so they call randomly. This is brutally inefficient. Top performers view their database as this pyramid. They organize their day to attack from the top down. They spend their golden hours, their prime selling time, focused on prospects at the pyramid's tip, the ones with the highest probability of closing. This gives them early wins, building confidence and momentum. Then they work their way down, gathering intelligence and qualifying prospects to move them up the pyramid for future campaigns. This entire system lives and dies by one tool most salespeople despise: the CRM, or customer relationship management software. Jeb calls the CRM the most critical sales tool you possess. Your prospect database isn't just a list. It's a golden goose that will keep producing for your entire career, but only if you treat it like a gold mine instead of a garbage dump. This means being disciplined, taking detailed notes after every interaction, updating records religiously, logging your calls. Fanatical prospectors manage their database like a CEO manages their company, because they understand that powerful lists generate powerful results. Now, as you start reaching out, you need to leverage another powerful principle, the law of familiarity. The more familiar a prospect is with you, your brand, and your company, the more likely they are to take your call, open your email, or agree to a meeting. Familiarity acts like lubricant for prospecting. It reduces the perceived risk for the prospect. How do you build familiarity? First, through persistent and consistent outreach. Every time you call, leave a voicemail, or send an email, you're creating a small touch point. They see or hear your name, and you become incrementally more familiar. Second, and most powerfully, through referrals and introductions. A referral from a trusted source gives you instant credibility. You get to borrow the equity of an existing relationship. Third, through networking. Not just collecting business cards, but creating genuine connections by being genuinely interested in other people. Fourth, through your company and brand. If you work for a household name, you have a massive head start. If you work for a startup, you have to help build that brand awareness from scratch. And fifth, through your personal brand. This is about investing directly in your own reputation as an expert who solves real problems. Now we get to the heart of the matter, the message. What do you actually say when you get someone on the phone or craft an email? Jeb emphasizes that your message must be quick, simple, direct, and above all, relevant. Prospects will give you their time for their reasons, not yours. You have to answer the most critical question on their mind: what's in it for me? This isn't about rattling off your product's features. Nobody wants to be pitched. It's about connecting to their problems, their frustrations, their goals. Jeb reveals the secret weapon, the power of the word because. A famous study showed that people are far more likely to comply with a request if you simply give them a reason, any reason. The word because triggers cooperation. Your job is to build a bridge to your because. This bridge connects their problem to your solution. For example, instead of saying, "I'd like to tell you about my software," you might say, "The reason I'm reaching out is because many VPs of sales I work with are frustrated with how long it takes to get new hires productive. I've got a few ideas that have helped them cut that time in half, and I thought you might be interested in hearing them." Notice the emotional trigger word, frustrated. People make decisions based on emotion and justify them with logic afterward. Your message must connect emotionally first. Once you've delivered your message, you face the most important, and often the hardest, part. Ask for what you want. Ask for the appointment. Ask for the information. Ask for the sale. And then, you must do something even harder. Shut up. That moment of silence after you ask is where most salespeople completely crumble. They get nervous and start babbling, trying to overcome objections that haven't even been raised yet. They literally talk themselves out of the yes. You have to ask with confidence. Assume you'll get what you want, and then be quiet and let them respond. And when they do respond, it will often be with what Jeb calls an RBO, a reflex response, brush off, or objection. A reflex response is something automatic like, "I'm not interested." They say it without thinking. A brush off is a polite dismissal, like, "Just send me some information." An objection is a more logical barrier, like, "We just signed a new contract with your competitor." Most salespeople try to overcome these objections. They argue, they debate, and they almost always lose because you can't argue someone into admitting they're wrong. Jeb teaches a completely different approach. Instead of overcoming, you must disrupt. He offers a simple 3-step framework for turning around RBOs: anchor, disrupt, ask. Let's say a prospect tells you, "I'm too busy." Your anchor is your first, immediate response. It's designed to stop your own emotional panic and buy your logical brain a split second to engage. A great anchor is to simply agree with them. That's exactly why I called. Now, you disrupt. You say something that breaks their expected pattern. They expect you to argue. Instead, you say, "I figured you would be, which is why I want to find a time that's more convenient for you." This is verbal judo. You're not pushing against them. You're pulling them toward you. Finally, you ask again, confidently and specifically. "How about we schedule a brief call for next Wednesday at 3 o'clock? This framework, anchor, disrupt, ask, is a repeatable script you can practice for every common objection you encounter. Having a plan is what gives you the confidence to stay in the conversation when most others would bail. This brings us to the ultimate principle, the driving force behind everything. It's about developing mental toughness, or what some call grit. Sales is a tough, grinding profession. You'll face more rejection before 9 in the morning than most people experience in a year. The superstars, the champions, aren't the ones immune to this pain. They're the ones who've developed the mental resilience to get back up when they get knocked down. This mental toughness is built on 4 pillars. First, a burning desire. You must know what you want and how badly you want it. Your goals are the fuel that will drive you through the rough patches. Second, mental resilience, which comes from constantly learning and sharpening your skills. When you outlearn your competition, you will out-earn them. Third, physical resilience. Your mental energy is directly tied to your physical state. This means getting enough exercise, sleep, and proper nutrition. And fourth, you must constantly feed your attitude. Your beliefs shape your reality. Expect to win. Believe that every setback is a lesson. And cultivate genuine gratitude. In the end, it all comes down to a simple choice. A choice that Jeb Blount distilled into 11 words that changed his life. Words he taped to the wall above his desk. When it is time to go home, make one more call. This is the essence of a fanatical prospector. It's the discipline to push just a little bit further when everyone else has already clocked out. It's in that one more call where the magic happens, where luck gets created, where championships are won. The book closes with a powerful story. Jeb's son plays for a small-town high school football team. They were massive underdogs, facing a much bigger, stronger, and better-funded rival they hadn't beaten in 6 years. From the sidelines, the coach didn't scream plays. He screamed one question, over and over. How bad do you want it? That question hung in the air on the final play of the game, with 5 seconds on the clock, as their opponent launched a pass into the end zone for what should have been the winning touchdown. Improbably, their defender, outsized but not outmatched, reached up and tipped the ball away. They won. They won because they'd been prepared, they'd worked harder, and in that final moment, they simply wanted it more. And that, Jeb says, is the only question that truly matters. When you're facing your challenges, when you're exhausted and beaten down, when you have the choice to give up or make one more call, it all comes down to one thing. How bad do you want it? As we wrap up our journey through fanatical prospecting, I want to reflect on why this book has resonated so deeply with so many people, far beyond the sales world. At its core, this isn't just a manual about how to sell. It's a philosophy about personal responsibility. It's a blueprint for taking ownership of your own success. The principles Jeb Blount lays out, the relentless focus on activity, the mental toughness, the discipline to tackle the hard work first. These are universal truths that apply to anyone pursuing something meaningful, whether you're building a business, mastering a new skill, or transforming your health. The most powerful lesson for me is the idea that we control so few things in life. We can't control the economy, we can't control our competitors, and we certainly can't control how a prospect reacts when we interrupt their day. But, as Jeb reminds us, there are three things we can always control: our actions, our reactions, and our mindset. This is an incredibly liberating philosophy. It frees us from the victim mentality that traps so many people. It forces us to look in the mirror and acknowledge that our success or failure rests squarely on our own shoulders. The empty pipeline isn't the company's fault or the market's fault. It's the direct result of actions we failed to take 30, 60, or 90 days ago. The concept of the 30-day rule is genuinely transformative. It teaches us that success is a lagging indicator of our consistent efforts. The seeds we plant today by making those calls, sending those emails, and doing the uncomfortable work may not sprout immediately. But they will grow. And if we stop planting, we'll inevitably face a harvest of nothing. This is a powerful metaphor for life itself. The daily, unglamorous grind is what pays for future glory. If you're looking to apply these ideas right now, here are 3 simple, practical actions you can take today, inspired by the book. First, identify your golden hours for tomorrow. These are the 1 or 2 hours of your day where you'll do your most important, high-value work. For a salesperson, it's prospecting. For you, it might be studying, coding, writing, or practicing. Schedule this time on your calendar like it's the most important meeting of your day. Protect it fiercely. Let nothing and no one interfere. Second, adopt the one more call mantra. At the very end of your workday or study session, when you're exhausted and ready to quit, push yourself to do just one more thing. Read one more chapter. Write one more paragraph. Send one more email. This small act of discipline builds the muscle of mental toughness and often leads to surprising breakthroughs. Third, prepare for rejection. Think about the most common no you face in your life, whether it's asking for something, presenting an idea, or facing a challenge. Instead of fearing it, plan for it. Practice a simple anchor, disrupt, ask response. By having a plan, you take the emotional sting out of rejection and turn it into a strategic conversation. That was our deep dive into Fanatical Prospecting by Jeb Blount. We've covered the core philosophies and frameworks today, but honestly, a summary is like looking at a picture of a magnificent feast. You can see the dishes, you can appreciate the presentation, but you can't taste the food. The real power of this book lies in the stories, the specific scripts, and the relentless, motivating energy that jumps off every page. This summary is your map, but the treasure is found by taking the journey yourself. If any of the ideas we've discussed today sparked something in you, I encourage you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning techniques. It's about absorbing a mindset that can fundamentally transform how you approach your goals and your life. The link to the book is in the description below. Also, if you found this summary valuable and it gave you something to think about, please show your support by hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel. That way, you won't miss our next exploration into another life-changing book from the Billionaire's Bookshelf. Let's keep learning and growing together.